We are at the Book of Tens. Today we start with Anguttara Nikaya 10.14. The Buddha said, monks, in whatsoever monk or nun, 5 mental obstructions are not abandoned, and 5 bondages of the mind are not well rooted out. In such a one, come night, come day, decline, not growth, in good states may be looked for. I stopped here for a while. These 5 mental obstructions are called Cetokila, and the 5 bondages of the mind are called Cetaso Vinibanda. In the Venerable Nyanatiloka's dictionary, Buddhist dictionary, he says that Cetokila, the mental obstructions, are 5 things which stiffen and hinder the mind from making right exertion. And Cetaso Vinibanda, mental bondages, are 5 things which hinder the mind from making right exertion. So basically, these 2 things are what hinders the mind or obstructs the mind from making effort, striving, exertion. Now, these 2 things are also described in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 16. And then the Buddha continued. And of what sort are the 5 mental obstructions not abandoned? Herein a monk has doubts and waverings about the teacher. He is not drawn to him. He is not sure about him. In a monk who so doubts and wavers, who is not drawn to and is not sure about the teacher, the mind of such a one inclines not to exertion, to application, to perseverance, to striving. In him whose mind inclines not to these things, this first mental obstruction is not abandoned. Again, monks, a monk has doubts about Dhamma. He has doubts about the Sangha, about the training. He is annoyed or vexed with his companions in the holy life, displeased, troubled in mind. In a monk who is thus, his mind inclines not to exertion, etc., to striving. In him whose mind inclines not to these things, these are the 5 mental obstructions not abandoned. And of what sort are the 5 mental bondages not well rooted out? Herein, a monk has craving for sensual pleasures, desire, affections, thirsting, distress, and lust have not gone from him. In a monk who is such, the mind inclines not to exertion, to application, perseverance, and striving. In him whose mind inclines not to these things, this first mental bondage is not well rooted out. Again, a monk has craving for the body. He has craving for forms. Having eaten his belly full, he lies given to the pleasure of lying down on back or side, a prey to torpor, or he leads the holy life with a view to join some order of devas, with the thought, by virtue of this way of life or practice or austerity, or holy life, I shall become some deva or other. Whatsoever monk has such an object in view, his mind inclines not to exertion, to application, to perseverance and striving. In him whose mind inclines not to these things, this 5th mental bondage is not well rooted out. Monks, in whatsoever monk or nun, these 5 mental obstructions are not abandoned, and these 5 mental bondages are not well rooted out. In such a one, come night, come day, decline, not growth, in good states may be looked for. Just as monks, in the dark period of the moon, come night, come day, it wanes in beauty, wanes in roundness, wanes in splendor, wanes in the height and compass of its orbit. Even so, in whatsoever monk or nun, these 5 mental obstructions be not abandoned, or these 5 mental bondages be not well rooted out. In such a one, come night, come day, decline, not growth in good states may be looked for. But in whatsoever monk or nun, they are abandoned and rooted out. Growth, not decline, in good states may be looked for. That's the end of the sutta. The rest I'm not going to read. It's the reverse, the vice versa. So now I explain a bit about the first one, Ceto Kila, 5 mental obstructions. The first one is the monk has doubts about the teacher. Here, the sutta is referring to the Buddha, because our real teacher is the Buddha. Other monks are supposed to be good spiritual friends who introduce you to the Buddha's teaching. The real teacher, the original teacher is the Buddha. So the first one, he has doubts about the Buddha. The second one is to have doubts about Dhamma. Doubts about Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. The third one is to have doubts about the Sangha. Now, the Sangha normally refers to the community of monks. This you can see from the Majjhima Nikaya. Every time somebody takes refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, they refer to the Bhikkhu Sangha. Also in the Dakina Vibhanga Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 142, it is stated that if you make an offering to if you make an offering to monks or nuns for the sake of the Sangha, then the merit, the blessings is immeasurable, boundless, and it surpasses the merit of giving to any single individual, including the Buddha. And even if the monks or nuns that you make an offering to are corrupt, they don't keep the precepts, etc., still, if you make that offering for the sake of the Sangha, then your merit is boundless. So, that is the Sangha. Again, some people say when you say Sangha, it refers to the Arya Sangha. This is not quite true, because even though it is mentioned sometimes that the Sangha consists of the 8 types of Arya, that is the ideal case. And if you take refuge with the Arya Sangha and you don't know who is an Arya, how do you take refuge? Whereas if you take refuge with the Bhikkhu Sangha, the Sangha of monks, then anybody who wears the robe represents the Sangha of monks. Just as, for example, nowadays doctors, when you refer to a doctor, a physician, who is a doctor? A doctor nowadays is somebody who is registered with the Medical Association, right? MMA, Malaysian Medical Association. He's registered, that means he is qualified as a doctor because he has graduated from some university. And so he is given the license to practice. So you say that person who is registered with the Medical Association and practicing as a doctor is called a doctor. But ideally, a doctor is one who helps sick people, who helps sick people for the sake of doing so and not for the sake of money. So even if a person who helps people to get well, physically well, and even though he's not registered with the medical association, and, for example, he keeps the Hippocratic oath, because doctors are supposed to take an oath to help people, and they are supposed to do the best of their ability to help people who are sick and in need of help. Ideally, that person is a physician, a doctor. But sometimes you find, for example, a person may be registered as a medical doctor, but that person, he acts, sometimes you do find that some doctors or physicians, they are more concerned with money, right? So sometimes, like for example, in a big city like Kuala Lumpur, to get a doctor to make a house call is quite difficult. There are some who make house calls, but when you approach many doctors, they don't make house calls, they don't make night calls, right? So that is actually not very good, because when they take the Hippocratic oath, they are supposed to help people. So in the same way, monks are also like that. Ideally, monks should be Arya, but not all monks are Arya, and not all monks keep the precept, right? But still, because they wear the robe, they are recognized as monks. That's why when we take refuge with the Sangha, we take refuge with the order of monks. So that is the Sangha. And then the fourth one, he has doubts about the training. Training means the training of Sila, Samadhi and Panya, morality, concentration and wisdom. And under the training of morality, it means keeping the precepts, keeping Sila. And sometimes people think that the training is only Sila. Sila is only part of the training. The full training is Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So it includes keeping moral conduct, it includes meditation, and it includes studying the suttas, so that it will also help you to get wisdom. So that is the training. And then the fifth one, he is vexed or annoyed with his companions in the holy life. If a monk is critical of his companions in the holy life, then he finds fault with them, he's not happy with them, he doesn't mix with them, etc., then that is an obstruction to him, fault finding. And these are the 5 mental obstructions that hinder a monk from practicing well. And then the 5 mental bondages of the heart is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for the body, craving for forms or visual objects. And then the fourth one, he sleeps a lot, a prey to sloth and torpor. And then the fifth one, he leads the holy life with a wrong motive, to be reborn as a deva or heavenly being. So these are the 5 mental bondages that also obstruct a monk from practicing well. Craving for sensual pleasures, craving for the body, craving for forms, prey to sloth and torpor, and practicing the holy life in order to become, to be reborn as a deva, a heavenly being. The next sutta is 10.17. The Buddha said, "Monks, do you live warded, not warderless? Sorrowfully dwells the warderless monk." Stop here for a moment. This word warded means protected. So what the Buddha is saying is, monks, do you live warded or protected, not unprotected? Sorrowfully dwells the unprotected monk. So the Buddha is trying to tell the monks that you must do certain things to get protection. Then the Buddha continued, monks, there are these 10 states that make for warding or protection. What 10? Herein a monk is virtuous, restrained with the restraint of the Patimokkha, perfect in conduct and resort, seeing danger in the slightest faults, and undertaking the precepts, trains himself therein. In so far as a monk is such a one, this is a state that makes for warding. Then again, a monk has heard much. He bears in mind what he has heard. He stores up what he has heard. Whatsoever teachings, lovely at the beginning, lovely midway, lovely at the end, in spirit and letter, do stress the holy life in all its fullness and utter purity. Such teachings are much heard by him, borne in mind, repeated aloud, pondered, and well penetrated by vision of view. In so far as a monk is such a one, this too is a state that makes for warding. Then again, a monk has a good friend, Kalyana Mitta, a good ally, a good companion. In so far as a monk has such friendship, this too is a state that makes for warding. Again, a monk is pleasant to speak to. He is blessed with qualities that make him easy to speak to. He is patient and clever at grasping instruction given. In so far as a monk is such, this too is a state that makes for warding. Then again, in all the undertakings of his companions in the holy life, be they matters weighty or trivial, he is shrewd and energetic, possessing ability to give proper consideration thereto, as to what is the right thing to do and how to manage it. In so far as a monk is such a one, this too is a state that makes for warding. Then again, a monk delights in Dhamma, is pleasant to converse with, rejoices exceedingly in higher Dhamma and higher Vinaya. In so far as a monk is such a one, this state also makes for warding. Again, a monk dwells resolute in energy for the abandonment of bad qualities, stout and strong to acquire good qualities, not shirking the burden in good qualities. In so far as a monk is such a one, this too is a state that makes for warding. Again, a monk is content with whatsoever supply of robes, alms, food, lodging, comforts, and medicines for sickness he may get. In so far as a monk is such a one, this too is a state that makes for warding. Again, a monk has recollection, possessed of supreme recollection and prudence, able to call to mind and remember things done and said long ago. This too is a state that makes for warding. Again, monks, a monk is possessed of wisdom. He has wisdom for seeing the rise and fall of things, wisdom which is Aryan, penetrating, going to the utter destruction of ill. In so far as a monk has all these 10 qualities, this too is a state that makes for warding. Monks, do you live warded, not warderless? Sorrowful dwells the warderless monks. These then are the 10 states that make for warding. That's the end of the sutta. Now I'll comment. The first one that makes for protection is virtue or moral conduct. The monk is, here is mentioned the Patimokkha. Patimokkha is the code of precepts, 227, that a monk is supposed to hold as best as he can. Because it's not possible for a monk to be perfect in all the precepts. And so, however well he can uphold the precepts, he is supposed to try as best as he can. Then, so if a monk has virtue, this is a state that makes for protection. The second one, the monk has much learning. Usually there is a word that occurs in the suttas quite often. It's called Bahu Satcha and sometimes Bahu Sutta. Bahu Sutta means much hearing. Much hearing means much hearing of the Dhamma or much hearing of the suttas, the discourses of the Buddha. And then Bahu Satcha, Bahu means much, Satcha means truths. So it also means much hearing of the truths. So here the second quality for a monk, second good quality a monk should have is to hear much of the suttas, much of the Dhamma, and remember or repeat, so that memorize, so that he can remember. Then this much learning is very important, especially nowadays, because there's a lot of wrong teachings. So if a person wants to practice the holy life, he should be very familiar with the original teachings of the Buddha, so that he can have right view and not get wrong view from some other teacher. And the third quality is to have a good friend. Good friend is a Kalyana Mitta. Now in Chinese, they translate that as a good knowing advisor. But actually, literally, it means a good friend. That means a good monk friend. And normally, it refers to a monk teacher. A monk teacher who can guide you along the right path of practice. So, in one of the suttas, the Venerable Ananda said, half of the holy life has to do with having a good friend, a good monk teacher. And the Buddha said, not so, Ananda. The Buddha said, all of the holy life has to do with having a good monk teacher. So having a good teacher is very important, because firstly, he will guide you to the right teachings, the right teachings of the Buddha. Secondly, from his experience, he can save you a lot of time, because he himself has gone through many years of practice, and he has wasted much time from not having a good teacher, perhaps. And then if you obtain guidance from somebody with experience, then you save a lot of time and effort. That's number 3. Number 4 is a monk is pleasant to speak to. He is blessed with qualities that make him easy to speak to. He is patient and clever at grasping instruction given. So this one is to be easy to talk to, easy to give instructions to. There are some people who are very stubborn, who don't take instructions. That is an obstruction. If you are that type of the person, then the teacher is not inclined to give you much instruction, because you don't listen, you don't obey. So having this quality of being easy to talk to, easy to teach, is a state that makes for protection. Then number 5, he is shrewd and energetic, possessing ability to give proper consideration to the undertakings of his companions in the holy life. Sometimes when monks stay together, they have duties to do. So a monk who is able to help by carrying out his duties properly, then that is a good quality to have. And then his companionship will be much valued by the other monks. And number 6, a monk delights in Dhamma, delights in the higher Dhamma and higher Vinaya. The higher Dhamma here is in Pali it's called Abhidhamma. And usually when the word Abhidhamma occurs in the suttas, it comes together with Abhivinaya, the higher Dhamma and the higher Vinaya. And this higher Dhamma does not refer to the 7 books of the Abhidhamma that nowadays some monks teach. Those 7 books of the Abhidhamma came later. This higher Dhamma refers to the higher Dhamma that you practice to get out of samsara. And sometimes the Buddha does mention that it refers to the 37 Bodhipakya Dhamma, the 4 Satipatthana, the 4 right efforts, Samappadana, and then the 4 Iddhipada, and then the 5 Bala, the 5 Indriya, the 7 Bojjhanga, and the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the things that you cultivate to get out of samsara. So this is supposed to be the higher Dhamma. And the higher Vinaya is the higher discipline, which is more for monks. Number 7, the monk dwells resolute in energy for the abandonment of bad qualities and to acquire good qualities. So this one, making a strong effort to progress. This is another good quality that makes for protection. Number 8, to be content with whatever requisites that he obtains, to be contented. Number 9 is to have sati. Here you can see the standard definition of sati. He has recollection, possessed of supreme recollection and prudence, able to call to mind and remember things done and said long ago. Very often nowadays they translate sati as mindfulness, but from the definition of sati, here you can see it means being able to remember what was said and done a long time ago. So it is the quality of remembering. So recollection is a good word because it means the same thing as remembering. Now what do you mean by recollection? Recollection means calling to mind, remembering. That means remembering to practice. And in the practice of sati, basically the Buddha advised that we should put our mind on a useful object of contemplation. If we don't put our mind on the useful object of contemplation, the mind tends to run all over the place, be very scattered, and think of worldly things. So that is why sati is calling to mind 4 things. Contemplate 4 things: the body, feelings, the nature of the mind, and Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. So that is the purpose of sati, is to put our mind, to remember to put our mind on the right place, in the right place, and not let it be scattered. And then number 10 is to have wisdom. And usually wisdom, as is shown here, refers to having the wisdom to see the arising and the ceasing of everything in this world. Because if you can see the rising and the ceasing of everything, either physical or mental, then you will see that there is no security in this world. Everything is falling apart. Everything is born and ceases, born and dies away. So because that is the nature of the world, impermanence, then you begin to realize it is a frightening world. There is no security, no permanence in anything. So that is the wisdom. The Buddha's notion of wisdom is not like worldly wisdom. Worldly wisdom is to know a lot of things. But no, the Buddha's wisdom is concerned with seeing impermanence. And because of impermanence, dukkha, which is suffering or stress or distress. Stop here for a moment. So, just now, those 10 qualities, if a monk possesses, it helps to protect him. I'll just repeat. The first one is having virtue or moral conduct. The second one is to have much learning or much knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, the original Buddha's teachings. The third one is to have a good friend or a good monk teacher. Then the fourth one is being pleasant to speak to, pleasant to instruct. Then the number 5 is to have the ability to carry out duties of the Sangha. And then number 6 is to delight in the Dhamma, to have an affinity for the Dhamma. Number 7 is to be very energetic to practice or cultivate and abandon bad qualities and acquire good qualities. Number 8 is to be content. Number 9 is to have sati, recollection. Number 10 is to have wisdom.